You're listening to Scribble Talk Teaching, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundaram, and I'll be sitting down with our industry leaders to dive deep into the topics that business-winning professionals like you can help to grow not just your skills and your function, but also your overall business. Today's guest is Carrie Jordan. And as you know, Carrie leads Microsoft PCoE, as they call it, Microsoft Proposal Center of Excellence, as they director of proposals. A detailed bio and a talk about Carrie is available in Scribble Talk episode number 114. But in a quick short summary, Carrie is director of proposals serving Microsoft PCoE. Previously, she served as strategy and ops lead for Microsoft PCoE program manager, senior proposal manager. Carrie is of over 15 years of experience in end-to-end proposal management, and her majority of experience are in public sector, predominantly IT, IS type of deals. Outside this, Carrie is also a successful small business owner, so there is an entrepreneur, a leadership instinct that Carrie also has, which we'll dive deep into this. So today's topic is going to be all about global proposal centers. What is a global proposal center? What are the building blocks of global proposal center? When does a proposal team become a proposal center, and so on? So I think Carrie is the right person, and I know Carrie really well as a good friend. So Carrie, welcome to Scribble Talk Teaching.
Thank you, Bhaskar. I'm so excited to be here chatting with you again.
Thank you, Carrie. Obviously, Carrie, I think as you progressed in your career within the PCoE team, you saw the evolution of PCoE team developing into what it is, and it's still becoming bigger and bigger, adding more and more elements towards it. But just going back to the very basics, Carrie, what are the basic kind of differences, from your opinion, from a proposal team to a proposal center?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, the exact moment that happens, I can't define, but I think it defines kind of the level of maturity of an organization. And, when we started, we were a very small team doing this pilot for Microsoft, and we were very much just a little proposal team at that point. We had 2 proposal managers, a graphic designer, and a content manager as the actual practitioners. And then, of course, had a couple of leadership kind of executive sponsors, but we were very much just kind of a team developing SOPs, doing as many proposals as possible. And then as we evolved, I think that's when it started to become more of a center of excellence, when we started building out the roles and identifying resources and templates and saying, okay, we need to add the writer editor role, and now we need to add a tech writer role, and then now we need another writer editor. So I think it can kind of speak to the level of maturity of an organization, and it can happen pretty quickly. It happened very quickly for Microsoft. We grew very quickly thanks to some executive sponsorship. So yeah, that's what I would say is kind of the level of maturity and the size of an organization.
That's a good start to the conversation here, Carrie. I think when you mention about your group of individuals in a team to now with the structure, maturity is a big word, right? I think the moment you landed the word maturity means that obviously there is a structured way of doing things here. Today, how is PCoE structured? What are the components of the PCoE team today?
Yeah, so that was one of the big things that, when I started out as a proposal manager, I really appreciated our leadership in Diana Parker. She asked me as a practitioner, what is the ideal way to structure this team? What have you seen successful in other proposal organizations? And, her inclination, having not been a proposal manager before, was to add a bunch more proposal managers. And so I kind of showed her the value of adding writer editors, graphic designers, content managers, desktop publishers, and all those support roles, those niche specialty roles that are really experts in their individual area, and how that structure really supports the proposal manager in scaling across more deals and being able to focus more on the overall management of a deal. So that's how we ended up structuring PCoE. So we have a mix of proposal managers. We have a content team with content managers. We have graphic designers, writer editors, technical writers, desktop publishers, and then now we're adding a new role called the quality specialist, who is going to kind of preside over and manage red team reviews, lessons learned, other color team reviews, so that it can be more of a external objective audit and compliance and a fresh set of eyes. And so the proposal manager can focus on the other millions of tasks in just running the bid.
Wow. I mean, like, it's, as a big multinational corporation like Microsoft, I mean, like, a proposal is not a simple proposal. And how do you decide these proposals? Because you will have a smaller Microsoft subscription for a school or something, which could be just, for 100 members for a license go, versus a much complex digital transformation. So you still need to your team still needs to support smaller tenders all the way to larger tenders, but there is a limit in how much resources that you could have and how much support you could give. And it's like a do-it-yourself, done it for you, and then done with you type of it. Do you kind of structure it around those principles?
Yeah, that's a great segue. I love that principle of when you're training someone, show them how, then do it with them, and then have them do it. So we're kind of approaching proposal excellence at Microsoft in a couple different ways, because to your point, we cannot possibly touch every single proposal that goes out the door from Microsoft. It's just way too big of a company. So the services that we offer are our end-to-end proposal management. And that's, the typical proposal manager, writer, editor, graphic designer, content, DTP, the whole kind of end-to-end cradle to grave support, where we're really collaborating with the seller to knock it out of the park. And then on deals where we can't support from an end-to-end perspective because we're at capacity or it doesn't meet our value threshold, which I'll get to in a second, we provide self-service. So Amanda Heather on our team has developed our self-service content system that has over 16,000 pieces of content. Now, obviously she had a lot of help, and we've worked with other groups in Microsoft to get to that number and that level. But that self-service piece, it has content to proposal. So question and answers, they've been vetted, they've been redacted and able to be reused. We have proposal templates in there. So that's one way that we really scale our service out to the field when we can't support them end to end. And then we're also rolling out a Microsoft Deal Excellence training in February, where we've partnered with a company to create this training. And basically it's the audience is the Microsoft sales field, because selling in that traditional way is very different than proposal selling. And it's often a different skill set that that sellers traditionally don't have or are not aware of the nuances in proposal. So we've created this 15 module training that will help scale out to the field to help teach them to fish for the times that we can't support them end to end.
Wow. I think, exactly as you rightly said, all the strategic must-win deals definitely gets into the team. Anything like a repetitive, which we have done, use the library, anything even smaller than that, here we go, learn all the end-to-end best practice, just do it yourself. It's just nicely structured. But it's easy to say that, but obviously it would have taken a long time for you to build these things. Any suggestions of do's and don'ts while doing this sort of do it yourself, done with you and done for you, Carrie, so far in your journey as a director of proposals for PCoE?
That's a good question. Let me noodle on that. Do's and don'ts. I think it's one of those things that we just took our best practice that we'd each learned from our previous experiences, and we weren't afraid to disagree as a team. I think disagreements and having differing opinions and experiences is actually really healthy for a team. And obviously keeping it respectful and listening and truly listening to hear instead of listening to respond is a really important thing, because without that, one of us could have come in and said, this is how I've seen it and this is how we're going to do it. Or someone else could have said that. And then we wouldn't have benefited from all of the different learnings that we each brought to the table. So I would say, as you're developing a proposal group, a proposal center of excellence, just really getting the pulse and the opinions of everyone who's willing to give it, and then collating that into kind of the best merging of all those things that you can.
As you rightly said, Carrie, I mean, like the sales team is kind of the buyer of services, and there is also operations who will then onboard the project into a contract. So what are the touch points between your team and the other functions? How do you kind of manage this flow of information and the flow of communications?
Yeah, so the first touch point is obviously with the seller. So that's the account team. Microsoft has account teams assigned to each external customer, and there's sellers and technical specialists and various SMEs within each account team. And so our first touch point is usually with an account executive or a client executive. And we work very, very closely with the sales team. So that's something that we communicate right up front, is that we are not a throw it over the wall service and we just crank it out and answer on behalf of the sales team. It's a really collaborative, linking arms kind of approach. And the reason that's so important is because while we bring the proposal expertise and the process and the resources and the best practice from the industry, what the seller brings is the customer knowledge, which is just as, if not more important. So, we could do it ourselves, but we would not know the depths of the customer pain points and hot buttons and having that relationship with a customer. So that's why we make it a really collaborative, deeply embedded process where we're like a little proposal family, us and the sellers, for, the weeks or months that we're working on it. And I think each bringing our own piece of value to the table makes for a really thorough, customer-focused, compliant, compelling response. And then when we we handle these deals end to end, all the way from kind of proactive influencing presentations before there's a formal tender. And then obviously through the tender phase, proposal phase, and then any BAFOs or final proposal reviews, we go through oral presentations and all that. And then once it's won and awarded, we don't do anything beyond that. So Microsoft obviously has a implementation arm as well, Microsoft Consulting Services. But once we get to that signature part, that's the last step on the PCoE train, and we just get into celebrating the win at that point.
If you look at the volume of opportunities, like Carrie, I mean, like as you rightly said, even if you say like 80% of the opportunities are managed within the sales teams or within that library that Heather created, or I always call it Heather, Amanda created, you still need to understand the volume of bids that goes in. When does it going to come? How are we going to resource it? How are you going to do the governance calls, etc.? How do you structure that volume? And how do you balance it? How off? Because with all the discipline that you have, most of the time you might know it's going to come and hit you, but sometimes you might also have surprises. How do you work this volume for all the deal flow?
Yeah, that's such a topical question for Microsoft and PCoE right now, because that's kind of one of the growing pains that we're currently experiencing. So Microsoft being so big and having so many sellers and accounts, it's very difficult for PCoE to get a really good handle on overall pipeline. So we can get pretty tight on pipeline and anticipated opportunities when we're working with specific subs, like areas like Australia or Germany. If we work that detailed, we can have a pretty good view of the pipeline, especially for public sector. But more broadly, we're working on a data integrity project with just cleaning up our CRM data and getting PCoE more of a hands-on access to that broader pipeline view across all the sales in our CRM system. So that's a project that we're working on right now. That's one of those things that, we were really fine being reactionary in the beginning and just receiving requests through, we have a formal intake tool that's in a Power App, and just receiving them through that intake and responding to them. But as we try to grow and become more nimble and have more foresight and intentionality into the deals that we support, we definitely are working on getting a better handle on pipeline and proactively reaching out to teams before there's an opportunity to help shape it. And then when we get in earlier, we have a much better view of when a final tender or presentation might actually be coming out because we're involved earlier. So that's definitely a very topical piece of the PCoE evolution right now.
Totally, Carrie. As you rightly said, it's always about incremental improvements. The journey is wherever it is. We might think it started or we might think it's done, but there is always improvements, and I'm glad team is pulling it. During the conversation, you just landed Australia and other things. So, this is where it gets very interesting. Constructing a proposal center for one geography, one type of service or a product itself is a hectic one. In your case, team here serves different geographies, different time zones. So how do you kind of think of all these things? My head is spinning as I speak myself.
Yeah, it is a lot. Having a global team, we're in every time zone, essentially, obviously not every single time zone, but we're across every day and time for the most part, where we have folks all at every time zone in the US. We have folks in South or Central America, in almost every time zone in Europe. We have folks in India and Singapore, and then Australia and New Zealand. So in terms of the logistics of meeting as a team, there's no time on earth that suits everybody that's not in the middle of the night for someone. So in terms of how we handle that as a team, because I think coming together as a community, as a proposal community, despite our geography, is really important. Like, our culture is so important. That's like a chief piece of what makes PCoE what it is that incredibly connected, positive culture. So the first way is that we just do our best to rotate times for meetings. When we have all hands, we always record. We have community calls. So there's a proposal manager community, a writer community, a graphic designer community, and we have those on rotating times so that everybody gets an opportunity to be on that call live. Our leadership team, so myself, Stacey Dewey, and Amanda Heather, are willing to. Being actually in the US is nice because we can get up a little bit early to connect with our folks in EMEA. We can stay on a little bit late to connect with Australia and New Zealand, and obviously either one, since we're almost exactly 12 hours apart from our folks in the Asia time zones. But that's how we just try to be flexible. And then in terms of actually assigning deals and covering deals with account teams around the world, we try to assign within the region as much as possible. So if we have an Australia deal, we try to assign obviously an Australia or New Zealand based proposal manager. Work-life balance and setting boundaries and times of working is incredibly important to me. So, whenever possible, we try not to assign anything outside of a time zone. That's not always possible because of capacity and all that, but that's one thing that we try to keep at the forefront when we're assigning.
100%. Oh my God. So do you sleep, Carrie, or?
I do. I'm getting so much better with my boundaries. Everybody on the team is, at different phases with their ability to set these boundaries of their time. But I am naturally a very early riser. I've got very young kids, so we're all up early. So oftentimes I will start pretty early, but then I pretty much set a boundary of 5 p.m. I'm done. I might check back in on Teams on my phone in the evening, just to make sure that nobody in my Australia team needs me, or New Zealand, or that there's something from a Pacific Coast team member. But for the most part, I really do shut it down at 5 p.m. And then we just have a culture in PCoE that we just trust everybody to do the work in the time frame and the schedule that works best for them. So, for example, Stacy Dewey runs our proposal manager and writer, and right now graphic designer communities, and she is willing to stay up late to hit the Australia time zone for those when she does those biweekly community calls. And so she'll just, end up hopping on later that morning and trying to make back time. And sometimes I'll say on a Friday afternoon, hey guys, cut out early, give yourself back, take back some time, because I know you work later this weekend. So, we really are not a team that focuses on when your jacket's on the back of your chair. We trust our team to work within the schedule that works for them. And I think people are pretty good about, because we're so vigilant about modeling it, people feel comfortable actually doing that and being okay being offline, because I got on early, so it's okay that I'm getting offline at 3, and knowing that they're safe to do that.
Totally, Carrie. I know. I mean, like, what a culture. I think it's important to have that thing of, yes, sometimes it could be the other way around. I am not physically present in front of you, which means I need to prove that I am there all the time when an email lands, whether it's 11 o'clock, 11 p.m. Even from you, I remember you always say, even within the intro, with the very first, I know it's 6 p.m. for you, don't message or respond now, send email in the morning. I mean, like, it's important, I think, for people and the culture to be in place. Otherwise, as you know, bids never stop, and people will be working continuously, and having this kind of structure helps you process-wise as well. Otherwise, you'll be timesheets, X, Y, Z, who does what, etc., etc. All these things also kind of needs to be done. So well done, Carrie. So happy for you and your team. Carrie, obviously, when a proposal center is structured, and you will need to get a budget from the sponsors, and the sponsor will give you X amount of money, provided you hit your certain things. Do you have any sort of metrics or something that you need to go back to your sponsors by, or is it fluid? There we go, guys. We have supported 300 proposals worth $30 billion. We successfully won. So that's the return of it. Is there anything like that, or like the culture that you talked about? It's like, be there for us for the strategic deals. This is the success we have. Is it things set in stone for you, or there is a fluidity around the way PCoE is managed?
Yeah, there's more of a fluidity. I think we don't have metrics that we have to meet in order to continue to receive funding from our leadership, but I do provide a quarterly metrics newsletter, and the main metrics that I share are our win rate for either the quarter or the half of the year, depending on when I'm sending it. And then I share the dollar value of revenue that we've won that quarter or that year, again, depending on what kind of timeline I'm doing a roundup for. And then I share ROI. And I think this is one that's really important, because there are so many different groups lobbying for funding within Microsoft. This group wants to spin up this thing, and this group, and over here. And there's so many different ways that executives can spend their budget in a company as big and resourceful and brilliant as Microsoft, that talking their language in terms of ROI, like, hey, if you invest this, you're going to get this much back. I kind of talk about it like investing in the goose versus one golden egg. Is investing in a proposal center isn't just buying a golden egg, it's buying the golden goose who will continue to give you the golden eggs. And so the ROI, the way that I calculate that is the amount that we've spent in terms of our budget that year, and then obviously the revenue that we've brought in that particular quarter or year. And so I divide that out and share that ROI, and that's always really compelling. At the end of last fiscal year, I started my newsletter budget with a subject line of something like, when choosing where to invest your budget, choose the team that will take, $1 and turn it into $459, because at that point our ROI was 459 to 1. So speaking in a language, it's just like in proposals where speaking to your customer is so important. Like, fortunately, I'm a proposal practitioner, so I know how to speak that language of communicating value and benefits versus the features and stuff. So we don't have set metrics that we have to report on. I just find that the most valuable ones when I'm trying to secure budget are win rate, ROI, and then the total dollar values won in that particular time period.
Did you just said, Carrie, that for every $1 investment, PCoE gives back $459?
Mm-hmm.
Mike, do you sell any shares?
It's funny. I always tell my team, they're always like, Carrie, it's so great you got us more budget. And I'm like, no, you guys are the one who are cranking out this value. I feel like I have the easiest, best job in the world because I get to go advocate for a team that advocates for themselves. Like, they are so brilliant. And so both quantitatively in the way that they are winning and showing success and just providing so much value, and then qualitatively in like our NSAT score being really high and just the incredible testimonials. I feel like the glory should not come to me in securing budget. It's the glory should come to the team, because they're the ones who are just making it a slam dunk investment decision for our executives.
Totally. I think, as you rightly said, once you set up the right culture and let your team, empower your team to deliver, and that's the result, what you just talked about, Carrie. I mean, like, kudos to you and Stacey and Amanda and the wider team on this. Just looking back on the starting of PCoE, Carrie, I mean, like, say year 1, how was PCoE? Year 2, how was PCoE? Year 3, year 4, and what's the current year and what's the future? How do you see the future of PCoE being structured? Is there anything that you could share?
Yeah, I love this question. So we are only about 2 years old. So November of last year was our 2-year anniversary. And that's when we first met for our early adopters pilot program, when it was just the 4 of us that I mentioned, plus our executive sponsors. And that's how we went on through about 8 months until the next fiscal year started in July. So 8 months of just that small little team of 4 practitioners and building the plane on the way down. So very small, humble, but mighty team. And then because of the success that we were able to demonstrate in that 8-month pilot, we received full year formal funding in July 2020 for that next fiscal year. So at that point, that's when, Diana asked our opinion as practitioners, hey, how should we invest this money? What makes sense? What's going to help us scale? What's going to ensure quality? What is the best way? And it was just such a blessing. What an opportunity to create a proposal group from scratch for a company like Microsoft. So I think, we were all just kind of dazzled that we had this opportunity, because usually you work in a proposal group and you got tons of ideas about how you would change it if you could, but here we were able to start it from scratch. So we all really put our heads together. And that first year, we went from the 4 of us to somewhere in the 30s or 40s in terms of number of people. In 6 to 9 months, we grew really fast. And we've really maintained that entrepreneurial spirit of everybody is a collaborator. Everybody has an opinion. Everyone has the ability and the autonomy to propose a change, a way to increase the quality, to iterate our team. We're never kind of in a fixed mindset in our team. And so everybody that's joined our team since the beginning, I think, feels a really deep sense of ownership to PCoE, because we've had that really like all hands on deck. We're all creating this together kind of a culture since the beginning. And so we went from 6 to, I think it was 38 in that first 6 months that we had formal funding. And that's when we started something called PCoE Special Projects. And this was really led by Stacy, where she is just being like the process and quality queen that she is, said, hey, let's figure out how we can add some structure. Like, we've got all the people, we've got all the doers, but let's make sure that we have some resources and some consistency so that the service that we're bringing to the Microsoft field, to the sellers, is consistent across whether they get Carrie as a proposal manager, or Stacy as a proposal manager, Marty as a proposal manager. So we give our team plenty of autonomy to operate within their role with their own, personalities and nuances. But Stacy launched this special project thing right at the right time when we were growing, about a year in. And, that was like developing the red team SOP. So developing a scorecard that we could use. And she revolutionized lessons learned. I've never seen such a good lessons learned process. And then our onboarding project, we got so many new people that we said, let's give them some really good onboarding. Let's give them some context into the giant world that is Microsoft, and how my proposals here are a little bit different. And so that special projects piece really, I think, propelled PCoE from a quality standpoint to where we are now. And then that the special projects never end. It's just like a honey-do list. There's always new ways to grow, always new things to fix. And then that was a super successful full year fiscal funding. And then this last July 2021 is when, around the time that I took over as director, when Diana was promoted to lead both the capture and the proposal teams all up. And we introduced a couple new roles. So tech writer was a new role. So I think it's just, as we grow, we continually have these LT meetings where we take a step back and we say, like, how could we make this better? What are we missing? What are we constantly poll our team on, like, what do you guys need? What do you want? What could make your job easier? What could make the quality better? What is the sales team complaining about? What is it that they tell you constantly that they're missing? And that's how we identify gaps, like tech writers and the quality specialists that we've just rolled out. So just keeping that spirit of growth and new ideas and collaboration, it has kind of been how we've grown. And now we have 58 team members total.
About 2 years from 4 to 50.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure that 58 members, as you rightly said, are scattered across 11 or 12 countries across the globe, right?
Yep.
Wow. Carrie, I think that's beautiful, Carrie. And I'm so excited for you and the wider team here. So, Carrie, obviously there is culture that gets involved, right? I mean, like, PCoE headquartered in, say, US, whereas the team members are in different countries. For many of them, English might not be their first language. They might even be writing proposals in a different language, where that's the format of it. Say, for example, in Europe, it's common. So how do you kind of balance that, Carrie? I mean, like, because proposals are not always in English. Sometimes team does it in different language, and they could be experts in writing it in their own language, but then they need to then come back and convert the collateral, like Amanda's collateral, back in this thing. How do we kind of, give the team the confidence, don't worry, English is just language. Secondly, the best practices are shared on both sides, from English to non-English, non-English to English?
Yeah, so we have different language pods, especially throughout Europe. As you know, the EURF tenders is a big focus right now in the industry, in the proposal industry. So we have Italian, we have Spanish, we have German and French. We also currently actually have Danish and Norwegian. So we have these different proposal pods in their individual languages, and within their local account teams, they are conversing in their local language. Often the tenders are in local language and the responses in local language. So those teams are probably more embedded in the local team than, say, in the US or in the UK or something, because they have that cultural connection of their individual language, and because the standard language in Microsoft is English. So I think there's just a connection where they get really deeply connected into those account teams, our PCoE members. And I think that's a really great thing. It makes the local account teams, I think it builds trust. It builds that kind of connection and similarity, because it's hard. I would guess, I've never been a seller at Microsoft, but I would guess that it's hard to let go of something that's so important to you, that's, you know, part of your sales quota and your livelihood, to someone that you don't know and trust that they're going to improve it and not make it harder or worse. So I think that language point, that connection, that cultural of sourcing people in country and in language is really helpful in the way that we've done that. And then in terms of how we cross skill and cross ensure quality, we have obviously the same standards, the same processes, but again, we give our proposal team a lot of autonomy to operate within their individual personalities and within their individual cultures. So proposals in Spain are different than they are in New Zealand, are different than they are in India, are different than they are in the US. And that's because the world is different, which is so wonderful. So, you know, we still have those kind of standards of quality. One thing that's tough that we really can't achieve is the peer review aspect. So one thing that we do a lot in PCoE is have peer reviews where we encourage each other to create a safe space where we review each other's proposals. We do, whether it's a compliance check or just an overall, edit, or just a second set of eyes. And so we can't do that as often if we only have one or two people in a particular language supporting. But that's something that we're hoping to expand with quality specialists in various languages and geographies as we build out that role a little bit more. And then right now we're actually not curating non-English content into English and then back, or vice versa. So our tool, RFPIO, actually that's where our content lies, has a translation via Microsoft Translate. So all of the content goes in there in English, and then the proposal managers, the writers or the field members can translate that into, it used to be 17. I'm pretty sure it's more like 18 or 19 languages now. So they can translate that into their local language. So they still get to utilize those 16,000 pieces of content and translate it into their local language. But right now, with the scale that we have and the size of the content team that we have, we're not taking, say, a French proposal and then translating it into English and putting it in our system, because number one, we just don't have the capacity and the translation capabilities to do that. It may be a future project, but also there's so much about the quality of proposal writing that goes into things that would be literally lost in translation probably. So in those cases, we try to keep like official documents or things like that kind of intact in their official language, and then we can store it as a single document in the document library versus as a reusable piece of content that's translating back and forth, if that makes sense.
My God, Carrie, I don't know, it feels like it's a wonderland for me, this one. With the moving parts that you're talking about, but you are still smiling, you are still happy, so I'm assuming all are still doing good. So thank you, Carrie. So, Carrie, and sometimes, as you know, even though team knows that there is this best-in-class team that's available for us to do the proposal, sometimes the local teams might know somebody whom they know locally that they have worked in the past. They might go and say, here we go, X, come and do a proposal for me, come and do something for me. So how do you kind of give them that freedom to just do, I understand, guys, come back to us as a first request. We will do our best to do the right thing for you. As a second option, you go and do it, or does the teams go and do their own thing and then you get a surprise? Because I used to run a global center myself. Sometimes it was challenging for me to convince them and say, hey, you don't know what the nuances about this, and I know this person can do it versus, this. Do you find that managing this overall proposal process, or how do you mitigate that?
Yeah, a little. So sometimes, especially if we're talking about a specific geography or a particular language or country, they will maybe have a suggestion or a colleague that they used to work with that they would like to use. And we're not opposed to having, a local referral practitioner be the person that's part of our team that does it. So example, say, let's come up with a country, say Germany comes to us and they say, hey, we have these series of proposals. I know someone, Georg, who I want to come and do it. I used to work with him. The step would be that we would kind of interview and have a conversation with that candidate to make sure that they were a proposal practitioner, that we felt comfortable that they were going to represent Microsoft and the PCoE name. And then we would just bring them on through, a supplier and do it that way. So we're not opposed to using referrals. I think referrals are a huge blessing. A big part of PCoE actually is referrals from one another. So we're not opposed to that, but we don't get that as much. The bigger thing that we can come across sometimes is that they don't have a preconceived person that they want to do it, but some account teams and sellers understandably are more hesitant than others to fully embrace the leadership of the proposal manager, because like I said, it's a very sensitive thing. When you're a seller, you own the account, you own the relationship, your bottom line is affected whether you win this or not. So sometimes that manifests itself in some uncertainty. We call it FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And so part of what's so important in the way that PCoE engages from every point, from the intake process, from me as the director interacting with the local team, from Stacy accepting the deal and assigning the pod, from the discovery and kickoff call that the proposal manager makes, is just building rapport and building trust. Mm-hmm. So, leading with vulnerability, with personality, with, experience and kind of being a chameleon to that particular team, I think is an important skill set that a lot of proposal managers have, is just leaning in and building rapport and a relationship and a connection right away to get that trust and that buy-in from them to allow us to kind of influence without authority, if you will.
Totally, Carrie. I think you nailed it. It's not as simple as, here we go, guys. Here are a group of people, and this is the kind of underpinning process. Just go get on with it. There's a lot more to it, and I understand the whole empathy that you talked about here. Carrie, that comes with because you mentioned very early on the work-life balance of the team. That also comes with the development program. Both, as you know, you progressed from a senior proposal manager, program managers, strategic operations, all the way to director of proposals. So how do we kind of provide the continuous development to the people within our team so that they don't feel that they are just churning out proposals left, right, center every year?
Yeah, this is such a great question. Growth and career are so important to me, obviously, as you've just shared my personal journey over the past 2 years. So, Stacy and Amanda on my leadership team have a similar story. Amanda started as content manager, and then she was content lead, and now she's my strategic program manager on the leadership team. And Stacy likewise started as a proposal manager with me, and then became the proposal manager community lead. And then now she's our operations manager. So there's those kinds of paths available. And then we've actually recently started rolling out this community lead role across the other leads. So we recently promoted Emily Barnes on our team. She started out as one of our first proposal writers, and now she is our proposal writer community lead. So like I mentioned, we have the individual communities. We think it's really important to have a niche role community for each of the practice areas within PCoE. And we look for leadership. We look for someone who's stepping into the role and leaning in to do things before they've been asked, just because it's a natural a need that they see and they say, why not me? Why can't I fill this? So it's funny, Emily was actually leaning in and doing proposal writer community calls and volunteered to do that before we even thought that we needed role leads for each community. And so then when we came to that conclusion, we were like, well, obviously it's Emily. She's already doing it. We didn't even ask her to. So it's one of those things where we look for those people who are, and it's hard on PCoE because almost everybody is like that. Pretty much everybody has that kind of spirit. Well, they'll lean in and provide more value than they were ever asked of. And that's just one reason this team is so incredible. But we look for those things and then we find ways to celebrate it, to promote it. So community leads is one way. We're looking at eventually launching time zone leads. So that will be another way that we manage the global nature of the team, is having an Americas, an EMEA, and an Asia time zone lead that can manage intake and local relationships and the local teams there. So that would be another kind of promotion or growth opportunity for anybody within PCoE now to apply for that kind of a position. So we're constantly trying to think of different ways that we can elevate the team and give them new opportunities to continue to grow outside of just, being the practitioner.
Superbly nice, Carrie. I think it's amazing, when people are given the recognition and the opportunity, and the empowerment and the empathy. My God, this is the place to work for, I think.
I think so.
I mean, stepping back now, if somebody is considering, okay, because what COVID has done, as we talked about, is every member of team who used to be based in one office, now they are working from home in different places. Obviously, that became, like it or not, a proposal team. Default became a proposal center now. So during this, 2 years time, I think you had a nice transition when PCoE was about to launch, or when it was launched within the first year you had COVID. So it means you already have a much more cultural setup for COVID. What did you learn from this experience of managing team virtually, Carrie?
Yeah, so it's funny because I had been a proposal consultant for many years before I came to Microsoft. I actually came as a proposal consultant initially. So I was very used to working remotely as a proposal manager. I'd worked for some small businesses remotely. I actually worked for one company that was headquartered in North Dakota. And so obviously that was a remote job because I do not live in North Dakota. And so I was very comfortable with the notion of working remotely. I'd seen how it had been done successfully before. I'd personally been, just an independent consultant where all of my work was remote. So I think having that confidence that managing proposals remotely can be very successful helped. And then, Diana, she's headquartered in Washington State. Stacy's in Ohio. Amanda is in Kansas City, and I'm here in Virginia. So we're already a completely diverse team in terms of geography. So that was always going to be the plan before COVID even happened. We knew that we were always going to be a 100% remote team, with the hopes of coming together maybe once a year for, an all hands or a community team building connection kind of thing, which we still hope to do soon. But I think having always known that would be the case, and having my confidence of having done that for so long remotely, and I know Stacy and Amanda had both been consultants and worked remotely before, I think it was kind of, I don't want to say effortless, but it was not as difficult as it would seem, because I think it's quite easy to manage a proposal team virtually. And I think there's a misconception that I guess a lot of jobs had, not just proposal industry, that you had to be in person in order to be effective. But with collaboration platforms like Teams and obviously SharePoint and Outlook and all the different things that we have to collaborate, Microsoft has a great tool called Planner, where it's like this planner board where you can assign and move things into buckets. And there's just so many productivity and modern work tools now that we just really leaned into those available to us as Microsoft employees and made it pretty seamless. And then from a cultural standpoint, we just connect on a human level, and we make sure that human level connection is first and foremost. So I don't think anyone on our team, and I've just had one-to-ones with everyone on the team, feels isolated, or, I mean, I think we all do a little bit with COVID, but from a work standpoint, I think everybody feels very connected and very much energized to come in and have fun at work, because we recognize the human first. So we talk about our kids, we have, we share pictures of our pets, I talk to them about my house progress, they'll share what they're making for dinner. So that connection of human first, I think, helps us from a cultural standpoint traverse the whole remote work aspect without it feeling like we're disconnected as a team.
Wow, I think it is amazing. And that's more important. I mean, like, people, as you rightly said, people will go all the extremes to do the right thing for the right boss, for the right company, provided they are being looked after. And people talk about great resignation, and I mean, like, even from our survey, I think what we found out was like 28% of the people out of the 700 proposal professionals who surveyed on was looking to move jobs within the next 3 months or something. And that's why it's important to have an environment like this, so they feel that they are valued, they feel that they are nurtured, and so that, as a business, then you could have a peace of mind that, what, bids are coming, I have a great team, and I'm going to find even more opportunities for them to work on and move on from there. Yeah. So nicely done there, Carrie. Carrie, the last question. Okay, I am a bid leader, looking to construct a proposal center of excellence. What advice would you give them?
I would say servant leadership. So if you're a bid director, if you're a leader, if you're creating a team or have just inherited a team, always remember that you are there serving your team. The team is not there serving you. You are there to create an environment and a culture for them to want to do their best work, for them to want to show up and go above and beyond. And I think when you have a servant leadership mentality and you bring vulnerability in yourself, they will feel safe to be that again with you. If you show empathy, they will be empathetic back. And if you trust them, they will trust you. I actually just posted something about that on LinkedIn recently, a video with Simon Sinek, who's one of my favorite authors. And he was talking about how so many people think that, so many leaders think, how can I just blindly trust my team? They need to earn my trust. And it's no, the leader, the leader has to trust the team first. The team says, why should I trust you as my leader? To kind of paraphrase what he said. So I think starting as a servant leader and really coming like, how can I help you? How, polling the team constantly, asking them how they feel, one-to-ones, connections, being a human, encouraging time off, like gain their trust, be worthy of their trust and serve them. And they will just go so above and beyond for you and for your organization. And it just creates such harmony in the team. So I would say servant leadership, because everything good will come out of that, I think.
Wow, what a powerful advice. Thank you so much, Carrie. I mean, this is not an easy role to have, especially, running a global proposal center with people with different capabilities, different functions, different geographies, and whatever you name it. And over the years, it's just taken 2 years for the team to go from 4 to 58, and it's still going to go from bigger and better things. So I wish you and your family and everybody in Microsoft all the good health and happiness, Carrie. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your wisdom. I think, congratulations to you and your team, and anybody looking for a role elsewhere, you know where to apply. So please do. I will speak to you very soon, Carrie. Thank you so much. Have a good, happy, successful 2022 and more.
Thank you, Bhaskar. You as well. It was an honor to be on here with you.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Pastor Sundram,
signing off.